the new trend for investors that they're looking for business with a sustainable, business model.
Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Tran. I'm a marketing branding strategist. I help organizations, their teams, their team leaders deliver and execute on the challenges they're facing, from marketing campaigns to market entry activity, all the way through to strategy and planning. If you want to hit me up, check out my website. It's www.andrewtran.asia. You can find out a little bit more about me. You can book time with me. But until then, let's get on with the show. My next guest is Vince Vu. He is an entrepreneur, he's an investor, he's a partner, he's also an advisor for various startups here in the Vietnam ecosystem. He is currently the co-founder for Bizzi Vietnam, which is an accounting automation tool using robotic process automation as it aims to simplify and digitize the financial operations of companies. We talked about his career, what led to Bizzi Vietnam being created. We also talk about the Vietnam startup scene as well, and provide absolutely critical tips for anyone that's looking to invest here in Vietnam, whether or not you're building a startup here or you're already a startup here, when we start talking about talent acquisition. Without further ado, give it up for Vince Vu.
All right. Vince, how's things, man?
Great. It's been great so far.
Yeah.
Very busy. Yeah.
Nice, man. Nice.
Yeah.
So for anyone who, oh wait, we've got our drinks. Yeah, bring them in. Nice. Cool. Salute.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
So for anybody that is watching and listening to this, we're doing it live at this really awesome cafe. Do you know how to pronounce it? Guiem La.
Yes.
Is it? Guiem
Yes.
La. So if you guys are ever in Vietnam, check it out. They're really nice staff. If you need to work, there's a pretty quiet place to work as well. So it's really, really cool. But Vince, thank you so much for joining me, especially for this episode where it's actually live in person as well, which is really cool.
Wow.
We connected via LinkedIn like several weeks ago, and you have this incredible story that I want to share with everyone here. And before we get into, because I really want to get into his startup, Bizzi Vietnam, right? But before we kind of get to that, I kind of am really interested in how you have been doing, or how you actually got to this particular point in your career.
Right.
So maybe just give people who are watching and listening a little bit of a background as to, I guess, what you've been up to over the last, say, like 5 to 10 years.
Yep. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to share my story. During my last 15 years of professional experience, I've been through different positions with different, environments, from multinational companies like Unilever, GlaxoSmithKline, to private equity firm like Vietnam Investment Group, and then did my MBA in the US, and then came back, turned into angel investor, and now a co-founder of a startup myself. It's been a great journey and learning experience for me so far.
Yep.
So I started my career as a management trainee at Unilever, and I got the chance to rotate to different functions, business functions in Unilever, and really have a solid foundation and understanding of how business works. That's a really great fundamental for me to develop my professional career. And then I moved on to become the brand manager at GlaxoSmithKline, where I involved in a very interesting project to launch Sensodyne, the flagship sensitive toothpaste, into Vietnam. I remember at that time, sensitive teeth is still a very interesting concept for Vietnamese, because in Vietnam, if you translate that word literally into Vietnamese, people are not familiar with that term, in Vietnam, we know sensitive skin, we don't use the word sensitive for teeth.
Yep.
So it's a very interesting story where we have to decide how to call the toothpaste category, how to define it. So that's a great learning experience of launching a new product,
Yep.
a new category into Vietnam market.
Yep. Was that both above the line and below the line as well? Like there was like external like advertising? Yeah,
Exactly. So we leverage both above the line and below the line. But at the beginning, we will actually activate the below the line campaigns, working really closely with the dentist so that they recommend the product to the end users.
Okay.
Yes, that's how we can scale very fast because in this category, the users, consumers still have a great confidence in the dentist's recommendations.
Right. So
Yeah.
you went grassroots into kind of creating a really good relationship with
Exactly.
dentists around Vietnam.
Exactly.
And obviously you had to do some research to kind of figure out like, and come to that conclusion.
Exactly.
And from that, you were able to build trust within that segment or that quarter and enable them to basically, recommend Sensodyne. So how long, I mean, if you can remember, like how long was that journey before, in going grassroots, working with, various dental associations and stuff?
Yeah, it's for a year so that we can establish a really strong relationship with the dentist and the association. Yeah.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I joined the private equity group called Vietnam Investment Group.
Yep.
And another interesting project I was in charge of was launching Dairy Queen, the ice cream owned by Warren Buffett, into Vietnam market, and that's another fun story that I got a chance to experience myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went from fast consumer kind of goods to food and beverage pretty quickly.
Yeah.
What was so you went from like working for a pretty conglomerate, right, with Unilever and GlaxoSmithKline.
Yep.
And then you kind of moved from there to like your first foray into the startup world.
Yep.
Why did you do that shift?
I was always interested in exploring new things.
Okay.
I always intrigued by the question, why not?
Right.
Looking things from different perspective, and from that it gave me new ideas and give me the motivation to pursue new opportunities.
Yep.
So I keep involved with new projects. Either it's new brands, new products.
Right.
And then certainly new startups. Yeah.
And so moving back to the the Dairy Queen. What was the major thing you got out of it in that experience?
Wow, yeah. I had a chance to start build the marketing plan for market entry from scratch, and Dairy Queen is a well-established brand in the U.S. for 70 years. Owned by a very famous billionaire, and so in Vietnam we have to understand how consumers think about such a brand, and what kind of brand positioning should fit with the market.
Right.
So we have to do a lot of research on the consumer behavior and consumer insights to understand how they perceive such a U.S. ice cream brand.
Yes.
So for example, what price points it should be. One example in case is like McDonald's, right? In the U.S., it's a very mass, a brand for mass consumer. But when it comes to Vietnam, it can be like a very premium brand.
Yep.
So that's a different brand positioning in Vietnam.
Yeah, and it's really great that you said like fast food, because here in Vietnam, or just in Asia in general, the concept of fast food is very different to like Australia and the US and other parts in the West, because it's considered more of a luxury item. It's, you know, the pricing is very universal as well. It's almost, but it's still very, even though it's fast food, it's way more expensive than getting like Comtam, for instance, where it's like only say a few dollars at the very most in US terms. But you know, with that amount, you can barely afford anything in McDonald's. So you know, there's that kind of price difference that a lot of you know, I guess nations in Southeast Asia are having. And I think there was something really good that I think CNBC or Bloomberg, they pushed out on their YouTube a little while back, and it was about how are these kind of big conglomerate fast food joints, and how did they survive to some degree, or how they failed in a sense, like in Vietnam. And really interesting that you mentioned that as well. I remember when, like, it was only recently, like a few years ago, Hanoi actually had their very first McDonald's, and the lineup was absolutely crazy.
Exactly. Same for Starbucks. You look at the long queue.
But I guess the thing with Starbucks, so the difference between Starbucks and say McDonald's is, at least Starbucks, like, its coffee is such an ingrained part of Vietnam culture. Even though it is very expensive in comparison to, say, local Vietnamese coffee, but you know, the commonalities with regards to you know, the culture of drinking coffee is still quite same. Like, it's still the same kind of mentality towards it. So I think with that in mind, like with Starbucks, they had a slightly better market entry in comparison to, say, like McDonald's.
Exactly.
So you did that. So you had to do a lot of research, you know, to kind of figure out consumers' kind of perception, their needs, how you adjust from a market entry perspective, which is fantastic. So then it kind of allowed you then to take those experiences and then enabled you to kind of keep pushing forward within, I guess, the startup world, right? And then so what happened after that? Like, after you launched that, you know, that product, and then kind of moved on into your career, like, where else did you go?
I got a Fulbright scholarship, and I went to the US for my MBA for 2 years. And during that 2 years, I got involved with startup world and angel investment. I was running a what I call Thunderbird Angel Investment Network of accredited angel investors in Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow.
And so I learned a lot from those angel investors.
What did you learn? What was the key thing that you learned from being like an angel investor for Thunderbird?
Wow, it's I was lucky to have a you know, great mentor. He's a serial entrepreneur turned angel investors, and the first thing I learned from that is you know, if you want to to have a successful startup idea, it must be a painkiller. It's not a vitamin, which means that it should solve the real problem of the users, right? You know, it's not nice to have. The second thing is all about risk and returns. As an investor, you always calculate, you know, the risk and the returns, and actually the job of the investor is to de-risk, to manage the risk. You know, so the more you can, the better you manage your risk, and you know, the better chance of success.
Right.
So
wow, that's incredible. That is so important. Like, as you know, we're in this current economic situation where, you know, a lot of, you know, basically a lot of foreign investment have somewhat either dried up or definitely on hold. You know, especially, I mean, you know, you're feeling it in Vietnam. It's all across Asia as well. So with that in mind, like, I want to touch on that part as well. But so with Thunderbirds, you had this incredible opportunity, you know, over in Arizona. And when that finished up, did you come back to Vietnam?
Yeah, that's the requirements of the scholarship. So so I you know, but at, you know, from the very beginning, it's all my goal to come back to Vietnam. You know, this is a growing economy. There's a lot of opportunities. So you know, when I started to to think about my my plan for the future for the next 5 years, I always think that okay, Asia or Southeast Asia is the place to be. So I always want to come back and contribute and be a part of the growth. Yeah.
Nice. And when you came back to Vietnam and wanted to kind of start your entrepreneurial and startup kind of career here, what was if you can remember, what was the landscape like? Were there obviously right now there's over 600 startups in Vietnam, but back then, take us back then, like what was it like back then?
It was 2016 when I came back to Vietnam, and at that time the startup ecosystem started to grow. We now emerge as a new destination for international VCs, incubators, accelerators. They came here to Vietnam and look for opportunities. We also see a wave of overseas Vietnamese who work overseas and then come back to Vietnam, just like myself, and started to do their business because they see the opportunities. So I think it's the right time, it's an exciting time for startups at that time. So far, during the last 2 years, the ecosystem has been growing strongly and robustly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this takes us to right now, like with your current startup that you founded with Bizzi Vietnam. Tell us a little bit about it for those who don't know about Bizzi Vietnam.
Right. So Bizzi, we call ourselves as intelligent robotic bookkeeper as a service. So imagine that you can hire bots to do boring, mundane, and repetitive, bookkeeping tasks. The reason we started this startup because the government is pushing hard for digital transformation, and within finance and tax, e-invoices become a requirement of the government for all Vietnamese companies. So I think this is a huge milestone and a strong push for digital transformation in Vietnam from this year onwards.
Wow.
So and at the same time, the RPA technology, robotic process automation, is on the rise because the return on investment for this kind of technology is very clear for companies. So the adoption is very quick. So combine the two factors, we think it could be cool to do something to try to help accountants in Vietnam to free themselves from repetitive work and add more values to the accounting job.
Okay, so you saw that the government was shifting its focus around digital adoption, and they were doing some reforms in the taxation area. And so with that in mind, like you were like, okay, well, how can we improve accountants doing their jobs, but free up their time to enable them to provide value for their clients and their customers? That's really cool.
If you look at Vietnam, accounting tech in Vietnam in the last 20 years, actually there is no innovation. People keep using the same accounting software, and there's no new software or startups in that area. So so when we look at that, we think, wow, this could be our opportunity to do something new.
So it's almost like your first mover advantage.
That's right.
Wow, that's really cool. And then from there, do you have a accounting background? Like how did that happen?
Wow, I didn't.
Okay.
So I have a finance background. That's my major. In the university, my bachelor. Have a good understanding of the overall financial fundamentals. Yeah. But there's always the way to go around that. So I have very senior advisors, people with lots of experience in this industry. As CFO, chief accountants of companies, and charter association of accountants in Vietnam. So they give great advice and valuable insights.
That's so important, like as well, like for any startups out there that they have an idea. And going back to your very first mention, like with your mentor has had to say, hey, look, like it needs to solve a problem, right? But on top of that, besides solving a problem and besides having good basic business fundamentals, like how do you scale, how does it make money, all that kind of jazz. I think what's also really important that Joshua mentioned was connections, like being connected within the environment, in this case like the financial space, the accounting space, and really having those kind of key influences within those spaces be able to just kind of emotionally or intelligently invest in your idea, and to give it influence, and that way it enables you as a business to then talk to investors, external investors, and figure out ways of which, like, how do we build this from an idea to an MVP, and moving it forward. So I think that's really cool, man.
I mean, having no background in accounting is also like a good point, because you can look at that problem from a new perspective, right? As I said from the beginning, why not, right? So you will discover new things and new solutions to that problem. The same like the story of Stripe, right? The whole team, they don't have the experience in banking or payment, but they look at it from the very new perspective and discover a very great way to solve the problem.
That's cool. So, that's a really good way of putting it as well, like not having that experience but having experiences in other realms, and able to bring that enthusiasm, that curiosity to look at a problem from outside, and then saying, asking really like, oh, why do we do this? Why can't it be like this? Finding ways, and then that's how, like, deduction, right? Like design thinking, like we understand the whys, and then from there we're able to develop like a solution around it to solve a particular problem.
Exactly.
Cool.
That's the mentality.
And also like your I love the fact that your background, you started off in client side, right, with Unilever, with GlaxoSmith, and then in a sense, like how I see startups sometimes is it's like, oh, they're like an agency. Like they're constantly having to sell themselves, their product. You're only as good as the last work you've done. And so with that in mind, like you've got this really great mix of being in a cultured, like client side environment, and understanding and having that the time to nurture yourself, to become a really good business operator or marketer, and then business operator, and then having taken that kind of first leap into the foray of startups, and then eventually becoming like a partner and an advisor for other startups as well. I think that's so important, and the reason also why I wanted to speak to you was also to kind of talk about the Vietnam startup scene for anyone that's kind of interested as well. Like with that in mind, like you just said before, like the government is trying to push and have a strong initiative to try and push towards like digital adoption, transformation. Is like in Vietnam as well, like they've also, it's a government thing in terms of opening it up for foreign investors and for startups as well. Do you find though now with like in terms of the different industries that are happening within the startup world, what do you think are the different industries that are performing well or that are exciting in the next, say, like couple of years?
Wow, definitely fintech. You look at the development in the incredible growth of fintech startup from Vietnam like Momo and PayU,
Yep.
and you see there's a lot of potential in Vietnam for this area in the next 5 years.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a big consumer market, right? Like almost 100 million population, and the penetration of mobile phones, is large in within urban and rural areas as well.
Yep.
So that's a great infrastructure for fintech, to grow, like payment, mobile wallets.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. Like I meet a lot of startup founders, and a lot of them are very young. Which is cool in one sense. Like it's very exciting.
Yeah.
That they've got these grand ideas. However, like what do you think? Like because you've come from both ends, right? From a startup perspective, you come from like you're now a co-founder, but at one stage like you're an advisor and you're a partner as well. And so you come from a background where you assess other startups and assess them on their fit from a market perspective and also from a culture perspective as well, like their people. What are some of the challenges that you see right now in, say, the Vietnam startup community when it comes to just trying to grow?
Right. I mean, talent is always a big challenge for startups everywhere in the world. Right now, it's in Vietnam. There's a really strong competition for talents. Engineers, growth hackers. You in this industry, it's very well. It's really hard to find people with the right skill, right mindset for startups. And if there are, then there will be competition from different startups, even from enterprises. So that's the first biggest challenge that every startup founders need to solve to grow scale the business.
Nice. And then like so that's one of the kind of big challenges, like in terms of like talent as well, right? But do you also see right now, like we've got this economic downturn, and at the moment with this economic downturn, you're going to see quite a lot of startups close. And funding for it to be decreased. So I guess there's two questions to this, right? The first one is as investors are a lot more cautious. Do you feel investors will be more looking towards startups that are more business driven?
Yep, definitely. Right now, this is the new trend for investors, that they're looking for business with sustainable business model. There's no more growth at all cost anymore, right? So you have to prove that you can really sustainable in the long run.
So it's more accuracy in terms of projections.
But
do you also see projections being not as grandiose, like like you see businesses, they're like, oh, we're gonna grow by several millions of dollars, and do you think that will now be scaled back to more like, oh, this is more the achievable amount?
Right. Yeah. So right now, investors or founders look at like 12 or 18 months runway and try to achieve that goal, in that short period of time, then going forward from that.
And like I wanna kind of go back on one thing, like your experience, this whole experience that you have, both working from a client side and then all the way within different parts of startup and now co-founding your startup. Is there maybe one or two things that you were able to bring in terms of your background with all your working experience into Bizzi that you feel as if it's gonna definitely maintain Bizzi's kind of trajectory towards its current kind of seed funding at the moment?
So it's a mix of experience, after years of working different position, different settings, and see, from different perspective, So I think it's very important that I or any startup founder be able to see from the customer's perspective, understand their problem really well, and have the right solution for that.
Yep. And I think also like your background also enables, and we just touched, and this is I guess the second question, because startups are so young, and organizations in the startup world here in Vietnam are so young. Like it's very easy to have a startup team that the average age is maybe 23, 24.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you find being a little bit older than that, do you find like the leadership that you provide also enables your team to function better?
There is a advantage and disadvantage of that.
Yep.
So the good side is that I have experience and I can look at things from different perspectives. Yep. and can guide the team. But on the other side, there can be generation gap.
Yes.
where I can't understand. In my team there are developers who is 10 12 years younger than me.
Wow.
So that could be a big generation gap.
I get that as well. Actually, I was speaking to someone about this, and I think startups, they have this odd job of being both a manager and a leader at the same time. And I find a lot of startup founders, it's difficult sometimes for them to understand how to act or how to talk as a manager versus how to talk as a leader, and they feel sometimes that they're exactly the same. Like, I should be myself. I think sometimes when you talk to some founders who are a little bit inexperienced, and it's like typically like they've poured so much time and investment into that product because it's their baby. They sometimes lack the kind of experience needed to lead and manage a team. Do you see that when you were like back in the founders days, or not founders days, back in the kind of advising days as well? Like, did you see that as well?
Right. Normally we will look at the maturity of the founders. Emotionally, as well as the leadership capabilities. If they, the age doesn't matter. But as long as you are mature enough to lead the team, to lead the business, to work with your customers, that's great.
That's cool. And look, like I know we're running out of time, but I want to ask you just one more question. What do you see over the next, say, 12 to 18 months in the Vietnam kind of startup community, given what's happening with COVID-19, given that there's going to be basically a global recession that's going to happen? It's going to affect Asia. What do you think is going to probably happen?
Well, it's I think it's actually depends on the vertical, right? The industry. Even a startup for in travel tech could have some problems, very challenging time. But for B2B SaaS, that could be a great time for a great opportunity in this time actually to capitalize on the opportunities of automation, of cost optimization, things like that.
Nice.
So I think yes, it's a very difficult time and challenging time, but the strong startup will emerge in this time.
Nice. Okay. And we talked about talent, right? The difficulty in acquiring talent. And I know in Australia, for instance, like talent is a lot more expensive to gather, and so sometimes they outsource, right? And one of the nations they do outsource is Vietnam.
Right.
So I guess what would be a tip that you would have if you were advising a startup that want to invest in finding talent here, say developers, for instance. If they were looking for a developer in Vietnam, what do you think are the do's and don'ts? Like, what are some tips that you would advise them?
Well, actually, understand the culture, understand the people here, and really understand what they want, they aspire for their career is very important, so that you can send the right message to the right people.
Yep.
Having a strong partner, local partner, is also a great way to help you to source talents.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's so important. Like that two functions, having a local partner that you trust, that will enable them to at least vet some of the people, and also giving the hired staff the opportunity to grow, and asking them what they want to do, because potentially they could be, they want to grow into their own startup and be a CTO somewhere, right? And so if you have a really great relationship with them as a founder, as a manager, as a leader for them, and able to encourage them to be better at, like, to do that function, but to be better at it, then they could step up and potentially take more ownership in the current startup that you're in, but then give them ideas and give them encouragement to potentially do their own thing. So I think that's really cool. Look, like, Vince, for anyone that wants to find out a little bit about you and a little bit about Bizzi Vietnam, where should they go?
They can visit our website anytime.
Okay.
Bizzi.vn.
Okay.
bizzi.vn.
Yep. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that on as well. Oh, and also, but like, if they want to find you personally, like, what would be the best way to do?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so
Okay.
you can check out my profile and add me anytime.
Yeah, great. And what I'll do is I'll put all the notes in the description, show notes below, wherever you find this, wherever you're listening to this. So all is good. Vince, thank you so much for joining me for this very first one-on-one interview.
Thank
so
you
I
very much
appreciate
for having
it.
me. Yeah.
No worries. And until then, I'll see you in the next video.